it's okay to say that. A coach would prefer that you did that rather than just ignore him, right? You know, as coaches, we're used to, I recruit all kinds of athletes. I'm used to people saying no. The biggest thing is that I really respect a kid who will, you know, will be honest with me and say, you know what, coach, your school, I don't think it's for me, and is honest about it, right? And then when I get a call about that kid from another coach, or someone asks me to recommend a kid, you know, those are the types of things that, you know, hey, this kid, I was recruiting him, he wasn't interested in my school, but he seems like a really good guy, maybe you should take a look at him. That happens all the time, okay? So, you know, treat coaches with respect, okay? Okay, looking at the next page, get into the fun stuff, okay? Marketing yourself to colleges and universities. You guys got anything before? Anything else? No? Okay. As a potential student athlete, there are a lot of things you can do to increase your exposure to different schools, okay? If you have something to offer to a school, to a coach, to a team, you need to market yourself to them. Okay, what you're selling is yourself, and this is the same thing as if you're talking to sponsors. Okay, you've got to consider you're selling yourself. Okay, what is your personal brand? Right, what is your personal brand? You know, create a brand that a coach, that a sponsor would want to buy. Okay, if you look at like products, you look at Coca-Cola, you look at Pepsi, you look at Nike, you look at all those things, they all have very specific brands. Right? And they do a lot of things in their marketing to sell that, right? And they really do everything they can to avoid negative exposure. It's got to be the same for you, right? What are you putting out there, right? What are you putting out there in social media? What are you putting out there in your communication with coaches? What are you putting out there on the floor? Okay? What are you doing to sell yourself, right? To sell your brand, okay? So first of all, we'll go through actions that can bring positive attention to yourself. Okay, open doors for yourself. Email coaches directly. Okay, expressing interest in their program. So look at, you know, the levels you want to play at. Okay, look at the academic goals you have. And then at that point, do as much research into as many institutions as you can that you would be interested in, that are realistic for you. Okay, and, you know, figure out who those coaches are. Fire off a very specific email to that coach, ask them about your program, showing them that you've researched the program. You know, if you say, I'm very interested in your commerce program, I've looked it up online, right? I like the way you guys played this last year. I've seen some of your video online, those sort of things. Like, those things help if it shows that you've actually got a vested interest in their program. It shows that you've cared enough to look into it, okay? You want to make sure that whatever you send to a coach, it's like applying for a job. You wouldn't send in a resume that had spelling mistakes, that's poorly written, that says, yo coach, things like that. You'd be blown away by the stuff I get. I literally get emails that are like, yo coach, I'm looking for a place to play, here's my video, and then like I open it up and there's a video with like rap music with swearing and stuff in it, and I open it up and I close it and I never look at the email again, right? Because you know, your coaches are detail-focused people who want people who are going to represent their program well, right? Want people that are going to get through school, okay? If you can't compose a proper email, how are you going to pass university? There's no way, right? So that's very important. When you contact a coach, okay, let them know if you're going to be in their city at any time. Let them know what your competition schedule is. You never know when somebody might happen to be traveling and be near where you are, right? You know, maybe you're playing in a tournament in Edmonton and that coach happens to have a game in Edmonton that week and, you know, is able to see you compete, right? So, you know, send them have your competition schedule, send that off and just invite them. Any chance you have an opportunity to come see me play, it'd be great if you'd come see me play. You want to create a resume, okay? Well-written, edited resume of what are your athletic accomplishments. This is where it's okay to brag about yourself a little bit, okay? This is where it's okay to put, you know, your positive numbers in there. You know, I average this many points. And you just got to be realistic, right? You know, I get guys send me stuff saying they average 37 points and 29 rebounds and just completely ridiculous stuff, right? Like, it's got to be something that's realistic that, like, if that coach picks up the phone and calls somebody, it's going to be backed up, okay? But, you know, Put all that stuff in there. What awards have you won? What select teams have you played on? For those of you that are in individual sports, what, if you're a golfer, what's your handicap? If you're a track guy, what are your times, right? Promote all that stuff about yourself. Okay, promote all that stuff about yourself so that the coaches can see what you're all about. Write a letter, again, being specific about the institution, why you're interested in it, those sort of things. Okay, and a lot of times sending those things through the mail is great, right? Because that's something a little different. Everybody's doing things electronically now. Well, sometimes when I get a paper package, I open it up, it's something that gets thrown on my desk, and I might end up looking at it just because it's something different, right? How are you going to differentiate yourself? Create a short, this is for the team sport athletes in specific, but I guess the individual athletes could do it as well. Create a short highlight film of yourself, okay? And when you create that highlight film, it's like for me as a coach, I don't have time to sit down and watch full game films to begin with, right? So there's kind of levels, right? When I get contacted, first of all, I want to see, can this kid play at our level, right? Right away. I want to be able to tell that within 5 to 10 minutes. Okay, I don't have time to sit down and watch an entire game, right? So put a highlight film of what you can do, right? The big thing is you have to have a camera on a lot of your games, right? So that you can, cut those clips and do those sort of things. Now, understand when you create that highlight film, create something that a coach is going to want to see, not something that you might think is cool or that's going to be cool for your friends, right? Understand what coaches are looking for. Right? Yes, I want to see that you can score the basketball, right? Do I want to see that you can dribble around 19 different people and be in an N1 mixtape? That doesn't really matter to me. Do I want to see, rap music with swearing and all those sort of things in it? Not really, right? Understand that, again, this is something that's a reflection of you and your personal brand when you send it in. Okay, so create a highlight film for yourself, send it in. That's one of the best ways for a coach to notice you. And then at that point, you want to also add that I have full game footage. If you're interested after seeing this, please let me know and I will send you a full game, right? Because that's kind of, those are the steps, right? You want to see what they can do in a highlight, then you want to see what they can do in a full game, right? Follow up. A lot of times as a coach, we'll get all kinds of emails. I might get an email on like a Thursday as we're heading out on the road. Coaches may get lost in the junk mail, they might whatever, right? Just because a coach doesn't respond to you doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested, right? What tells you a coach isn't interested is when they tell you they're not interested, okay? So, when you send something off as an email, you have no real way to be sure that the coach actually received that, okay? So follow up with a phone call a few days later. Obviously, you don't want to overkill. You don't want to be calling the coach every day or emailing him every day, but it's okay to send follow-up emails, to give a call, to ask if they have a tryout opportunity, all those sort of things. Okay, and if a coach tells you he's not interested or he doesn't feel you'd be a good fit with his program, at that point, you just respectfully say thank you for, taking the opportunity to look at me, and then you move on. But you do need to, be willing to follow up a little bit. Just like when you're applying for a job, you're not going to drop off a resume and then not come back and follow up on it, right? Let's see if there's anything else.
That's a good, just what Todd said, you have to think of it as a job. And just to reiterate what he's saying, when you're going, especially if you want money, right? It's one thing just to want to play, right? First it's like, acknowledge that I can play at that level, then I might want some money. You're wanting him to employ you. Just like any employer, right? That you reflect on him. And the last thing he wants is to take someone on who he's going to get called in then by his boss to say, what's going on here? Right? So can you play, and then the person you are, that's how you have to approach it. And sometimes that gets lost amongst people. As a youth coach, right? I can have the worst team in the history and people can still like me because I make it fun and we have cake at the end and it's all good and it's not about winning anyways, right? There's some pressure in university sports to win and be better, and then you also balance academics, and he carries that weight. That's his job. So if you're going to be one of his employees, that's how you have to approach it. And sometimes we forget that. So if it's not something that you would put on a resume or apply to a job, or you're not taking it, like this is, you've got brief little careers. You want to go into another career that maybe is 5 years long. right? And that's kind of how you have to approach that, promoting yourself. You're applying for a job.
Yeah, and you guys need to understand, like, you know, at the end of the day, as coaches, we all want to. Coaches are competitive people. We want to win. We want to compete. All those things. But at the end of the day, we all work at academic institutions. Okay, that most of them promote community. They promote academic success. They promote all those things. We want people that are going to, you know, promote those things out with our programs, right? You know, so we're looking at athletes that are going to represent us well competitively on the field, but are also going to represent us well off the field. You know, our guys here do all kinds of stuff in the community, working with kids, working with, you know, they do hospital visits, they do all kinds of different things to promote our program, right? And I don't want somebody who's going to be putting out stuff that's going to be negative, right? I don't want to deal with, to be honest with you, I just don't want to deal with a guy who's a negative person, right? Like, those are just, you know, good. That's not how successful people react or work, right? Kind of adding to that, use social media to promote positive things. Okay, have you guys talked about social media stuff with these guys at all?
We've been waiting for you, and then we're
going to do that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, we talk to our guys about social media at the start of every year. You know, when I'm recruiting guys, I always look up their social media stuff. Use it to promote positive things, okay? Use it to compliment a teammate, okay? When a coach goes onto your social media, what's he going to see? Is he going to see a bunch of positive stuff that you're doing in your life? Or is he going to see a bunch of negative stuff, okay? If you do volunteer stuff, it's okay to put that stuff up there, all those sort of things. But understand, again, everything that you put out there in cyberspace, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Instagram, all that sort of stuff, it's going to reflect, it stays forever. I want you guys to understand that. Like, not just when you're talking about going to university, when you apply for jobs, I would say 90% of employers go on that stuff. Like, every time a kid emails me, I go straight to Twitter, I go straight to Instagram, and I look them up, and I see what I can find. And right away, like, that's like an initial gate for me, right? Does the kid pass that first test, right? And like, a lot of kids don't get past the first 5 minutes because I go to their Twitter account and it's talking about drinking, or it's talking about stupid stuff, right? That I have no interest in being a part of my program. So, you know, again, put stuff out there that's going to be positive. It can also be, you know, it can be a detriment to you, but it can also be something that, you know, can really sell yourself, right? Social media is a great, powerful tool. You guys have an opportunity now that, like, 20 years ago didn't exist. 20 years ago it was much harder to get your kind of name out there and those sort of things. Now, as a coach, I can go onto your social media site, I can see your highlight film, I can know what you're all about, I can know what you do. I can know more about you in 5 minutes now than 20 years ago it would take me, you know, a dozen phone calls to figure out, right? So you guys have an opportunity, again, to put some really positive things out there about yourself. Take the opportunity to do it in the right way. There's nothing wrong with social media. I'm not against guys using it. You just got to be smart about it, right? And understand that it can be a tool. Use it as a tool. Go to ID camps, okay? If you want to have opportunities, go to ID camps. Ask coaches if they have opportunities to try out. Respond to communication from coaches. There's little things, and a lot of things in here are just like stuff that just drives me nuts, right? Guy emails me saying he's interested. I email him back, say, hey, I'd like to hear from you. You know, what's your phone number, this and that, right? And 3 weeks later, you get an email back, right? Like, how much do you really care about that opportunity if you're not willing to respond quickly? When a guy gets to our program and I ask them to do something, I expect it done within, like, the timelines that I'm asking, right? If I ask you to do something, if I ask you to, you know, second one there, or next one there, if I ask you to apply to the school, and it takes you 3 months to apply to the school, that's going to be a problem. Right? You know, if coach asks you to apply to school, get it done. It takes a little bit of time, but show that you have the commitment and the discipline to do those things and meet deadlines and do those things fairly soon. Make positive comments about your current coaches, your school, your teammates. Coaches want people who are going to bring positive energy to their program. If you hate your coach and think he's an idiot, don't ever tell anybody that. Don't ever tell anybody that. Because it's going to hurt you down the road.
Even if he is.
Right? But like
even, I mean, there's bad people out there. You never, if you become one of those guys who, or girls, who trashes coaches, you're a person who trashes coaches. Yeah. And no coach wants a person who trashes coaches.
I mean, because
bad or otherwise.
That's absolute cancer to your program, right? If a kid comes into my program, and, you know, and he's going to talk bad about his coach, well, when he comes here, there's going to be some point, during a 5-year career with your coach, guys, you're going to have a disagreement with your coach at some point. That's human nature. There's going to be some point where a coach asks you to do something you don't agree with, and you may have to do it. Well, if you're going to go out and trash that coach, well, it's going to bring negative energy to the team. It's going to bring things down, right? And, you know, for me, if a guy has a history and a reputation for doing that as a high school athlete, well, I mean, I don't want that in my program. One of the first things I always do when I recruit a kid, you know, how do you like your current coach? I actually specifically ask that question, not because I care how much he really likes his coach, just to hear what he has to say, right? And like, it's a huge red flag for me when I ask a guy, how do you like your coach? And immediately it's like pointing fingers and blaming their coach for not being successful. Coaches want people who are going to be personally accountable, right? They want people who are going to be personally accountable. Okay. Be honest in your interest in the school. If a coach is contacting you, if a coach contacts you and you're not interested in the school, be honest with them. Just be like, I'm not interested in your school because of this, you know, like, I appreciate your interest. If something changes, I'll let you know. Be respectful about it. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Coaches can deal with that. Treat your parents, your coaches, and your teammates with respect. Right? If a kid comes to on a recruiting visit and he's a jerk to his parents, it shows a lot about their character. Right? If he's a jerk to his coaches, if I go watch a game and he's a jerk to his teammates on the floor, that doesn't mean you can't like be a leader and get on somebody, those sort of things. But if you're not like respectful of the people you're working with, of your family, of the people around you, you're not going to be respectful of your teammates when you end up somewhere. Okay? So, you know, understand that again, anytime you're out there, you have to understand that those things happen too when you think nobody's watching. You think nobody's watching. You never know who's in the stands. It might be a parent who's a friend of somebody who's a coach, and that gets back to the coach, right? You know, you got to can display yourself with a high character with how you deal with other people, you know, whether you think somebody's watching or not, all the time, okay? Show emotional control and positive leadership and body language when you're on the court or field. Okay, again, coaches will see you when you think no one is watching. Dress in a way that a college coach would want his players to dress. That doesn't mean you need to be in a shirt and tie all the time, things like that, right? You know, but if you're walking around with like your tap-out shirt on with the F word on the back, I mean, that might not be something that a coach wants to have in their program, right? Because again, when a guy plays for me, when he goes out in the community, whether it be in the evening or outside of here, he's walking around on campus, he represents us, right? I've got 14 guys in my program. 90% of the people on campus know that they're athletes. And they may be, you know, displaying themselves great 99% of the time. It's the 1% where they do something negative that the people are going to remember and talk about, and it's going to negatively display the program, right? So, you know, again, dress in a way, act in a way that, you know, promotes yourself and would promote any program you represent. Be on time for things, right? If a coach asks you to meet him somewhere at a certain time, be there on time. And let coaches know who will help you make any decisions with your recruiting process. If your parents are going to be involved with that, make sure that your coach knows that they can involve your parents. You know, if you have a close family friend that might be involved, right? If there's people that are involved in your decision-making process, don't be afraid to tell the coach that and let them know that, hey, you know, this is my close friend. He's going to be helping make this decision. It's okay, right? Make sure that the coaches understand that, okay? So those are the positives, okay? If you go back to the page before. This is just as important. Do not. Actions that can close doors, okay? Don't send a mass email to every single coach in Canada, right? It's literally, it happens. I'll get like an email where they won't even BCC it. They'll like put every single, like literally I'll see every single coach's name in the email, right? Coach, I'm really interested in your program. It looks great, right? It's gone out to 85 coaches, right? It's like, yeah, I'm sure you've even looked up my website, right? Like it's, you know, show that you care enough about a program to specifically email the coach, okay? Don't send anything to a coach you have not taken the time to spell check, grammar check. Schools are academic institutions. Okay, I'm a detail-focused person as a coach. Coaches are in general, right? They want people who can go out and execute. They want people that can go out and take care of things in school. As a student athlete, you're going to have a ton of pressure and a ton of commitments you got to keep up with on a day-to-day basis. If you can't take the time to compose a proper email, you're probably not going to be able to make it to class on time. You're probably not going to be able to get through your first set of midterms. You're probably not going to be able to, you know, get through a 2-hour practice, a 1-hour weight session, do all your studying during the day, do all those things, okay? You need to show those things You know, something as simple as an email can tell me a lot about a potential student athlete, okay? Talked about this a little bit already. Okay, use music do not use music with inappropriate language as a soundtrack to your highlight film, okay? Either no music or instrumental music is probably the best. You might love 2 Chainz, but that doesn't mean the coach you're sending the video to will, okay? Do not put the following things on social media: curse words, rap lyrics. That rap lyric you put up there that you might think is really cool, the coach may not even know it's a rap lyric. He might just think you're an idiot. Okay? So, you know, be careful with that. Any comment regarding race or using a racial or homophobic slur, okay? Right? Like, you'd be amazed, especially like when you're, like, the N-word. I see that all the time on guys' Twitter account. Like, it blows my mind that people are using that word on social media or in general. But like, that's an immediate no-go for me as a coach if I see that. Selfies of yourself with your shirt off. Okay? I'm just going to be blunt. I don't want any douches in my program, right? If you look like a douche, like, I don't want it, okay? So, like, don't put that out there of yourself, okay? Negative comments about your coaches, about your teachers, about your teammates, about opponents, or anyone else. If a ref absolutely screws you in a game, and you go on after the game because you're pissed, and you go on Twitter and say, you know, that ref was an effing loser, blah, 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 right? Right away, that shows me a guy that's of low character, right? Okay, so don't do any of that stuff. Sexual comments directed at anyone else, positive or negative. Suggestive or inappropriate pictures of any kind. Pictures of you making out with your boyfriend, okay, or girlfriend. And this one's just a personal one. Like, I don't want to go on your Twitter feed and listen to how you're on your grind, right? Like, real athletes get in the gym and work. They don't actually, like, spend their whole time tweeting about how hard they're working, okay? And it's okay within your social media. I want you to understand, it's okay to promote that you're working hard, right? It's okay for some of that stuff to be in there. But, like, if you're that guy who's, like, goes to the gym and, like, you know, puts your muscle shirt on and sits in the corner and tweets about how hard you're working, I don't care, right? Like, I can spot that guy from a mile away, okay? Don't point blame at your coach or teammates for being unsuccessful, okay? Again, coaches want athletes who are going to be personally accountable, right? So, you know, everything you deal with when you're talking with the coach, again, be positive about the people you work with. Even if as a coach, when I walk into a gym, if you think if your high school coach knows nothing, I can tell that. I'm a smart enough guy. I've been around basketball long enough. If I walk into a gym and your coach doesn't know enough, you know, to you know, run the correct stuff to get you the opportunities you need, those sort of things, I can tell that, right? I don't need you to tell me that, right? Coaches can tell that stuff. Be personally accountable, okay? Don't disrespect officials, right? Again, come back to emotional control. This is a big one, guys. Don't have your parents be the only ones engaging in communication with coaches. I'll tell you right now what was a really turnoff for me as a coach. Because now when you start going to university level, it's different than when you're at high school, right? I don't want your mom or dad calling me and talking to me about playing time when you're in university. It's beyond that. You need to be able to show me through the recruiting process that you're able to man-to-man, you know, woman-to-woman, whatever, have a conversation with the coach about an issue that's bothering me or bothering you, right? So through the recruiting process, you can, you know, you show that you're an individual, right? And yes, your parents are a huge part of that process too. You know, they're going to be involved, but it's important, and it's a conversation you may want to have with your parents too. Like, you know, what questions, before you go in and meet with a coach, sit down with your parents, talk about what questions do we want to ask, you know, what information do we want to get from this, so that when you sit down with that coach, it's 90% of those questions are coming from you, not from your parents. I've been in a lot of recruiting meetings where, like, the athlete's here and the parent's here, and this is the conversation, but this is the person I have to deal with for the next 5 years. Because once that decision's made, and especially if the athlete's an out-of-town athlete, I might see this person once a year, right? I have to see you every single day, right? Does that make sense? So, you know, talk with your parents about this, okay? That's okay. Okay, so, you know, that to me, that's a small one you might not think about, but, you know, I think that's something you should really consider. You know, have that conversation with your parents about, and don't get me wrong, I fully expect when I sit down in those meetings that the parents are going to ask me some questions too. But, you know, like if I'm having that conversation and the only person that's talking to me is the parent, sometimes I wonder how interested the athlete really is, right? So, you know, try to create that direct relationship with the coach, okay? And again, you know, don't publicly criticize an athletic program or another coach or anything like that. Again, that would just come back and bite you. Okay, at this point, I think that generally, obviously that's just a general overview of everything, but do you guys have any questions about any of that stuff?
Going back to the social media guys, you always, everyone in here has to remember, and this is the frustrating thing for adults with kids. All that stuff that you see on social media has always gone on. Some of that language, everything. It's just that it's not broadcast to the world. So you have to be smarter. And people think Twitter or texting or that like private conversations. They're not. You can't say the same things. And adults keep saying it to kids and they don't listen. So they get to a point where, you know, I deal with high school kids. We kind of have to put up with some. It's the same thing. When some kid asks me for a reference letter, first thing I do, let me see your Facebook, let me see this. You won't give it to me, I'm not giving you a reference letter. When you get to be an adult or an employer, you're just not having your time with it. Doesn't mean you don't feel like that. Doesn't mean, you know, I remember being young and we got to do stupid things and not have it be broadcast forever. I remember coming in after a game, it was a provincial game, getting killed in a hockey game, 7-2 or something. And I got the game star, and I was so mad, it was a hat. And I took the hat and I threw it in the garbage as I went in. And I had a really good coach, and I was a bit intense. And so the coach just grabbed the hat, took me outside, and he told me, he's like, "Are you kidding me? Do you know how disrespectful that is? Someone gave you, they recognized you, and now you're gonna be pouty and put on a show? Are you kidding me?" And I'm like, and I valued his opinion. I'm like, yeah, you're right. So learning experience for me. You put that on Twitter, you don't have that learning experience. Someone reads it and they go, you know what? You're not a little baby for your coach or teammate, and they get to correct you. You're a world, and you're a baby forever. And all those things, like it's not a conversation that needs to go on in public, and they don't have to happen, right? And that is, you'll see people now, as you move up through, we're just at a point with social media, it is so powerful for positive things, but people just aren't dealing with it as much, right? And it haunts you. And I mean, we see it we just talked about that, the NFL. People are losing tens of millions of dollars because they can't do it. And when you hear Todd talk about some of these things, you can tell, obviously, somebody has turned in some game footage with rap music with swear words in the background. Because he's talked about it several times, right? These are things that you go, how can you not figure that out? Right? So,
well, it's one of those.
Sorry.
It's one of those common sense isn't very common, right? Like things like, you know, if you're gonna put, because it's like, I'm thinking, what's this kid thinking putting this out there to me? Like, this is the image of he's wanting to portray of himself to a adult coach, and I understand. Like, don't get me wrong, guys. I understand that. Like, when we go on road trips and we're in the van, my guys are listening to that stuff and I'm cool with it, whatever. Like, I understand that happens. Like, it's not that I'm against, like, rap music. It's that I'm against the guy who's, you know, going to put out that image of, you know, cursing and all those sort of things in a professional type, because, you know, you don't need to be a professional to act professional, right?
And here's the advantage that I take away for you guys in listening to Todd's message, when you say, how do you differentiate yourself? Well, you can differentiate it on the athletic field, and then you can differentiate yourself in the character field. You're all here. You guys have a network. You guys all work hard. You guys are those people who a coach says, yeah, I'm actually in the Canadian Sports School, and I have a trainer, Jordan Clark, could you talk to him? And well, That's a great connection. You know how many kids have that? Not very many. In BC. So those are the things that you have as tools, right, that you have an advantage. And that's a great message. You should take that as a great message to hear that character and working hard and who you are is the thing that can vault you ahead of others who might be equal in athletic or physical ability, because that's you guys.
Yeah. Generally you have your very small sample of like the elite level athletes who are program changers, and then you have a whole whackload of guys that like can play at a level, right? And when you get to that whole like, how are you going to become out of that big mess of people if you're in that group? How are you going to differentiate? And a lot of times it's the off the floor stuff that makes that difference, right? The guy who's willing to do just a little bit more, to hustle a little bit harder, to make sure that coach sees him, recognizes him, knows he's a good person, knows he's going to be a good addition to the program. That's how you can get yourself ahead, right?
I could personally vouch. I've written reference letters for people both in sports school and Ignite. It happens a lot, and I can say happily that people actually make this. So.
Yeah. I read an article by Alan Stein, who's one of Nike's kind of top strength and conditioning trainers. He works with like Kevin Durant and a lot of like the major NBA guys. You know, he deals with that all. He wrote an article just about what he gets asked by coaches, and like some of the questions are like, would you let him marry your daughter? Things like literally questions that are completely 100% character focused, right? You know, those things will differentiate yourselves.
Any questions? Anything specific?
Yeah.
Since no one here mentioned it, you talk a lot about looking at the smaller schools. I know in your program you have a lot of kids who came out of the CCAA, so
Yep.
Capilano, Langara, that kind of thing. And with certain people here who may not go CIS but may go college level, how realistic is it for them to be transferred out to CIS level? Or even if it's CIS?
I mean, it depends, right? For me, I look at the college guys a lot, and this is what happens with a lot of, a lot of the better guys coming out of high school are pretty oblivious to the opportunities that are really out there, and they end up going, because they don't want to leave Vancouver or whatever, they end up going to like a smaller college. And a lot of times if they're just not recognized at a high school, maybe they're better players than they get the exposure for or whatever, going those routes of going to college, and then there are opportunities for sure to go from the college level to the CIS level. On my team right now, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4 guys that are transfers. I think more than that, 4 or 5, right? About half my team is transfers. Okay, so guys who've gone to play college for a couple of years, they've improved, they've developed themselves, they've matured as people a lot of the time, and then, they've got that opportunity to move up and play at the CIS, right? I've seen it before. I've seen it with guys. There was a guy around here who went from, he barely made a regional team. He was a basketball player. This is probably 10 years ago. Barely made a regional team. Found an opportunity to go out and play at